Hi, Tychon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Natalie?
Good, good. It's nice to have you on the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited for this.
Yeah. So listen, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, tell the audience what you want them to know, and then we'll get started.
My name is Tychon Carter Newman. It's interesting when you say introduce yourself. I want to go to this title, but like that's actually something I'm working through right now because I feel like titles put us in boxes, and I'm like, what is the
Mm-hmm.
box? I actually on Instagram I just recently removed my title. I have it as
Okay.
creating impact, and to me, creating impact right now for me means helping men become better men. And I think that's like the journey and stage I'm in life, and that's what I do. That's what I do through building men's community and through creating men's content that just help us share our emotions and just become better.
So interesting. So tell me what led you to, well, I know that you called yourself a mental health ambassador. So what tell me about that journey.
Yeah, a really interesting one actually. It kind of stemmed from it's quite a long story, but I'll jump right into it.
Go for it.
It really started for me when I went on reality after I came off a reality TV show. So the backstory to this is I went on to this reality TV show called Big Brother Canada, which was a random experience for me. Before that, I was an urban planner, so I was very corporate. I was working a job.
Okay.
I COVID hit. I was approached by producers for this show called Big Brother, and at the time, I was like, I don't even know what that is, but I will watch a few episodes and see. And I looked, and I'm like, oh, it's a social game. So what the idea of the show is, 14 random Canadians move from across the country all into a house. And the idea is that they evict one another every week. So it's really depending on like having good relationships with people, being able to have emotional intelligence and read like, does this person like me? Who should I be friends with? Who should I make alliances with? Like it's that type of game. Really that requires like really good communication. So I was like, you know what? This sounds like something I could be good at, but being on TV doesn't really seem like me. But it's COVID and what else is there to really do?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I go on the show.
Yeah.
Very awkward experience for me in the beginning. And as time goes on, I start noticing like, oh my gosh, people are getting eliminated all around me. And then it gets to like the last five, six, seven, and I'm like, oh, wait, can I actually win this game?
Hmm.
Turns out 69 days later, after 3 months being in this process, I win. And right.
Wow.
And it was, yeah, it was such a crazy experience because it's like, there's no communication with the outside world. You have no phone. You can't draw. You can't listen to music. Like it was just such a, there's not an experience that I can compare it to.
Can't listen to music? I don't
No,
know if
no music. Yeah, like it's not real
I
life. Like it's actually like a simulation. Like you're being watched 24/7 and they're making a show from it. It's
So
actually
how
like
was that? What was that like being watched 24/7?
you don't realize it because you're just living your life. So imagine you and I are having this conversation and someone's just well, someone is watching because it's a podcast, but imagine that was your whole day. It gets to the point where you don't even really realize it. And people are they're producing a show from it. So that's why people are so interested in so invested in it because it airs 3 times a week and you get to start really getting to know people where you don't really get to know them on this level on other shows. So it's like it's very people get very invested in it. So coming out of this experience, it was like again, I came out to like fame. I won $125,000. It was like I was getting all these interviews. People were like, "What's next? What are you gonna do?" And I remember just feeling like the amount of anxiety
Oh
and
yeah.
sadness and heaviness I felt in that moment that appeared to be like one of the highest moments in my life was really concerning for me. And I think from that point, I was like, if I'm going through this in a what can be perceived as a good place, what are others going through? And it started allowing me to have a lot of empathy for like not only what others are going through in terms of like in a tough situation, but ones who are in perceived good situations. Like, what are these celebrities? We hear celebrities commit suicide, and we're like, what? How? They're so rich, they're so happy. But now you like I had an insight into what could really be happening. I'm like, oh, this is actually a bigger problem than we might think. And I think that's what led me to be on this journey. Like, I have to speak on this because it would feel really inauthentic for me to suppress all of that and pretend. And I felt like I just got to the point where I could no longer pretend. And I had to be an ambassador for it. Like I have to speak on this. And as I spoke on it, people were like, please keep doing this because you don't realize how many lives you're affecting, saving, whatever it is. And it's like, and it was also making me feel better at the same time.
Interesting. So I wonder, and thank you for sharing that. I'm curious about, could you have predicted feeling that way?
No, no, not at all. And why I say that is because I want to say up until that point, we think of life. I feel like a lot of us looked at life as this like stairway, and we see the stairway as in like when I get to the next level of the like when I get to the next floor, I'll be happier at that point, and then when I get to the next thing, I'm gonna be happier. So like, I think as I think of my life, that was kind of how it was set up. It's like, oh, when you finish high school, you'll be so happy to go to university. And then when you finish university, you'll be so happy to get a job. And when you get the job, you'll be so happy to get the promotion. And then you buy a house, and then you'll be happy when you have a what. And you're always like moving the goalpost to this next thing. And what I realized was that I got a lot of the things that people think they want all at once. And it still wasn't the thing. And it made me realize, oh, the thing is, things internal. Like you either have to really have somebody help you understand that, or you have to go through it to understand it. Everybody goes through it in different ways. People get promotions, or they marry somebody, or they buy something, and they're like, "Oh shoot, I thought that was really gonna be the thing," and then you realize it's not. And I think that's difficult to predict.
Interesting. I am curious about, so you won this thing, which is pretty big. And you did mention communication was probably a big part of it. So, what part of communication do you think won this for you? Like,
I would say you know how you said I'm curious. I think it was my genuine curiosity for people. What
mm,
I what I've noticed, especially in watching this type of show as I was studying it, you it's really reliant on relationships with people. And what makes relationships genuine, in my opinion, is that no matter what someone can do for you, you will treat them the same. And in that in those situations, I was genuinely curious, and everybody and I was genuinely curious about everybody and built genuine relationships with everybody. So when there were times they were in power or I needed them, it didn't seem like I was trying to use them or trick them. It was just kind of like we already have this relationship. Like, listen,
mm,
I'm being real with you here. I was always able to do that and navigate that because I built genuine connections. So when we say communication, I think for me it was like a listening, empathizing, emotional intelligence. Like I think I had a good read on, who are people I should be closer with versus not, just based on who I align better with. So it was like I think it was a lot of those type of things as well. But it was really like the curiosity. I was genuinely curious and getting to know every person that was there.
mm. So then, of course, I have to lead to, the fact that you took our life and wellness coach certification. What are you noticing? Or, I mean, tell me if anything changed for you or anything was, any awareness was created for you in that program.
I think for the program, like a couple things stand out to me. I think that, and I look at them from two different perspectives. There's the way in which I look at myself, and there's the
Mm,
way in which I look at others. And I think like I'm we spoke about a lot about self-managing,
mhm,
and I think like I've developed a deeper level awareness of myself. Even when I'm
mm,
speaking to people, how do I ask questions? Are they open-ended questions? How do I listen? Do I listen to respond? How
mhm,
do I how can I be more curious? Like I think it really reframed the way in which I have conversations and reframed just even the act of reframing things was something I learned. Like when I see something a certain way, it's like, oh, how about we reframe it in this light? You
mhm,
know what I mean? So it's like I think that's one, the way in which I see myself. And I think it was also like the way in which I communicate with others, my level of empathy, my level of I think I already spoke to it, like curiosity, the way like the different types of questions I ask now. It's like I've unlocked a different level because to be honest with you, like the skill sets for coaching, I think I naturally had them already within me. Like, it wasn't like I came into this and I was like, what are we doing? This is confusing. It was more like, oh, there's actually a science behind this.
Mm,
You know, there's actually like more to this than just being smiling and nodding your head. Like, and there's really like depth to this work. And it's like when you actually get behind the scenes and see it, you see how powerful it is. Because not only do now I have better relationships, I'm able to do things, I'm able to do my work in a better, like my podcast improves. My work I do with men's community improves. The way in which I make content improves. Like it just generally improved my life.
mm. Oh, so interesting. Um, so tell me about your passion for the men's community. What, what, why only men? What decided that focus for you?
So what's interesting is like I don't think the focus is only men.
Okay.
I would say like in a lot of instances, the community that I'm building is for men. But in my content, I'm speaking to a more general crowd. Not everybody, but I'm speaking to not just men. It's not like women can't get anything from this, but it's like we all know men, we all connect with men. So just to clarify that part, but why men? I think there's a few things here. I had like before, and this is like right before I registered for the course, I was having like this existential life crisis. Like, what am I doing? What's this? Because I was a social media influencer. I don't like that word, but that's the word people would have labeled me as. I was a social media influencer making content, doing brand deals, making great money, living this really good life, but it didn't feel fulfilling. Yes, I spoke on mental health,
Mm,
but it felt like I was just talking about it. I'm like, what am I actually doing though? Like, yes, it's empowering to hear somebody be vulnerable, but what can I do besides do these motivational talks and sit on these panels? Like, what more can I do? Because this is not fulfilling. And I think I took whenever you're in an existential crisis, like eat, pray, love, you take a trip. And I took a trip to Bali,
mm,
which I went on. I went on this trip with a couple of my friends, all women. And what was interesting on this trip was a lot of the conversations were centered around what is wrong with men now. Like that was like the set. We always somehow came back to that. And there was a point where I was defending men, and then
mm.
there were so many times where I'm like, I can't even defend this. Like, you're right. And it wasn't just what they were saying, it was like trends that I was also observing. And then trends about myself as well, where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, wow, a lot of us have a lot of work to do. And in having that realization, I was like, well, I have a lot of work to do. We all have a lot of work to do. How do we do this work? I think it was in that moment I'm like, oh, I might have to take leadership on this.
Hmm.
And like one of those steps was like in coaching. It's like, could I coach men? So I registered for a coaching program. But then beyond that, it's like, I need to talk about this. I need to talk about the ways in which I'm becoming a better man, but then also create spaces for others to do the same. That's how we launched our podcast called He's a Guy. He's a Guy now. I don't even host it. And that was the other breakthrough I had is in order to be a leader, you don't have to be the center of attention. I can empower others to lead in a space. So giving others power is a form of leadership.
Mhm.
So created the podcast. Now we have a bunch of guests and we talk about how can men become better men from all different angles, from relationships to sex to finance to all the things that comprise of being a man. So that, and then we said we need a space, like a physical space where men can come together and talk and connect and learn and grow and do workshops. So we created Mind State U, and now we've had 2 events so far where we've had men's brunches,
Nice.
where we bring men together and we have a theme or a topic, and we have food, we eat, we talk. We have a couple keynote speakers, and it's been one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. But
Nice.
that's kind of
Congrats.
the
Yeah.
yeah, that thank you. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the direction it's been going. And it's been like last one we did goal setting. We had guys like cutting, we did vision boards and we had guys cutting and gluing and using markers. And these are grown men you would never picture doing these things. And it was like it was beautiful to watch. Like and not everybody knows each other. So it was just like the way in which they were sharing and connecting. We all like I was truly moved by this experience. And it's like, okay, this is my purpose. Like I have to really keep going in this direction. And I think like this brand, this area of my Mind State You, the podcast, is to grow this movement of impact for men.
Hmm. So, okay, so I want to ask you so many questions. The first one, though, that I have to lean into is, so what were the trends emerging when you're standing there with your girl, your friends who are girls at the whatever airport or on this trip? What's coming up for, that had you thinking, oh, I can help?
Toxic masculinity, and in the sense of like, and I've noticed this with me, my friends, it really came down to like men con- controlling situations, right? And an example I'll give you is like more so even in the dating space, controlling the information. So being like dating a woman and not being honest about, what the situation really is. So it'd be like, I'm dating someone, but I'm also dating other people, but I'm not telling her, but I'm also not telling her that I'm not. But it's like me deciding that I'm going to keep all the cards close to my chest because she can't handle the truth. So that
Mm,
was like the one that stood out to me because it was like, it's a mentality that transcends other areas and that has bigger impact as it transcends other areas. So that was like the one that stood out to me is just like men just being dishonest and being dishonest with the rationale of protecting somebody.
okay. Okay. Interesting.
So that stood out to me because I was like, oh yeah, I do that. I've done that. I don't want to do that anymore. So that when I heard things like that, it was just that really moved me. Not being able to express themselves and not being able to say how they're really feeling, which kind of ties into that because that might not be to keep power, but because we don't either don't feel safe, we haven't been conditioned to express our emotions. So hearing that is like I never hear how men never tell me how they feel. I'm like, I've definitely been guilty of that, but I think I was further along in that journey per se. But I can resonate with that because I have friends and even in our conversations as friends, we don't really get the truth about how one of our friends might be feeling.
Mm,
I hear guys will be like, "Oh, I want to tell him, but I'm not going to tell him because I'm I'm not going to. I I I don't need to. He knows. He knows what he did. How does he know what he did? He just knows. He should know. But how? If you didn't say anything, that's a trend that I would see. So it's like they were speaking to things. I'm like, I see these things, and these are things that are quite simple to fix that have great impact. And I'm like, I can definitely help with these things among the other things. And then the things I can't help, I could curate the space to get help with them.
hmm. So, what have you found as a successful way to get men in general, I suppose, to open up about those things? Because at the root of it is, a pretty strong core belief, I would imagine. So, what have you found is a good way to break through that wall?
I would say with that one, leading by example. That's the
Mm,
easiest one. You get in front of a man and tell them, especially as a man like me who appears to have it all together,
mm,
and tell them like, look, like I don't know what I'm doing. I There's days I wake up and I'm like, I I want to quit. I want to give up because it's not things are not happening at the pace at which I want them to happen. Or if I tell them that I'm sad or I'm heartbroken that this relationship didn't work out or this friendship didn't work out. Like when you start saying things like that and sharing things like that, a lot of times they will match that energy. They will also share things of the same nature. And that to me is like what I've seen. So when you have smaller groups in a space and you share this, especially as someone that people might look up to, it has a profound impact. So I would say that that is like first and foremost the main thing. And we do it in the community, but we also do it on the podcast. So even if you're not ready to step into a space, the community, the podcast is another funnel. And it's like I haven't really built it into a funnel yet, but I see it as a funnel, like from how I'm looking at it right now. The thing I would say that I've noticed though is men respond to different language than women. And that's something that like I was actually building content before we got on this call. And I was like, this is like 3 lessons I'm learning in this journey is that like men don't respond to certain language. Things like healing and
mm.
trauma and what's another thing? Soft and like things like softer words don't speak to men. However, you can still have an impact on, again, reframing how you market to men, but still putting on the same workshop, but just marketing it in a different way. But one thing I'm learning is that like it's a softer words like soul and healing and soft and emotions. It's not really, men respond more to like hustle, grind, like that type of language. So it's like really trying to assess what language works best for them. So that's something that I'm still learning.
So how do you get that your target market to respond then? Because you're trying to attract vulnerability, but you have to use words like hustle and grind. How would you market that to the audience you're after?
I think it's because like men men more so than women are outcomes driven, in my experience, from
Really?
from an experience. So for example, a woman will go to an event just knowing it'll be fun or it'll be cool or they might learn something new or meet a friend. Like that might be enough for a woman. Whereas for a man, it's kind of like, well, what am I gonna make more money? Am I gonna, is this gonna be networking where I
What's
can
in it
like
for
be,
me?
yeah, like, am I gonna have bigger muscles after? Like, what am I getting out of this?
Okay.
Right. And I think so. So to your point, I think it's really articulating what they could get out of it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I actually made a post about like promoting my brunch, talking about, healing and all these things. And I made it was like a funny post, and the guy just disappeared, like, healing, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
I explained, I'm like, listen, like with these things come these things. You can have a life where you're financially free, where you're in healthy relationships. Maybe not healthy, like maybe not that language, but it's like really focusing on one, outcomes, and B, the language. Like even if it's like about how to hustle, we can talk about the hard side of hustling, but we can also talk about the soft side of hustling. Like at our last brunch, we had a keynote speaker. He talked about like, how would you guys describe men? He asked the audience, and they said strong, tough, um, a provider, all these like hard words. And he's like, okay, well, can men also be sensitive, caring, emotional? The guys were like, yeah, we can. But those are not the first things we think of. So it's kind of like hitting them with the first things, and then when they come in the room, hitting them with the second things. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of how I'm looking at it. It's like you can market it in a certain way, but then because it's really getting them to the space. Once they get to the space, they're gonna show up as they're 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 gonna show up as they want to be there. So they're gonna give their all once they're there, but it's like it's the getting them there. I have to do a lot of hand holding to sell out the space. I don't want to do that anymore.
Uh, what's the age group that typically shows up for you?
I would say 25 to 44.
25 to 44?
Yeah. Mostly in the 25 to 35 range,
Yeah.
but still guys who are a little bit older.
I would imagine that's an age group that has the most difficulty with what you're talking about. You know?
Mhm.
After a certain age, I think maybe a man is more confident in being emotionally intelligent and socially intelligent, but that's an interesting age group.
Yes. However, what I've noticed with the older men, which is really interesting, is that the older men might be better at managing some of these things because they have this like emotional maturity in some senses. But what I realize is the older men lack community. So
Mm.
I feel like a lot of times as men get older, they can be very focused on like finance and business, and maybe even a relationship with their wife, kids, or if they're not in, they don't have a wife. Like they can be very advanced in those things, but I feel like they still struggle in things like friendships, community, because I feel like what men feel like they can do with other men is often very limited, right? Whereas like women in terms of community, women will go to the mall, they'll go for tea, they'll get their nails done. There's like a long list of things women will do together. Whereas men, it's like the gym, maybe the bar, but then if they're in a relationship, they might be like, I don't want to go to the bar, like watching sports,
Playing
and
sports, I guess.
playing sports.
Yeah.
The list is not as long. It's not as diverse,
Yeah.
right? So the men who are a little bit more advanced in some of those things can bring that aspect of being a mentor to the community, but also the community part it brings purpose, it brings friendship, it brings connection, which a lot of times they may be lacking in their life.
Well, and what I noticed about all the examples you used for men, watching sports, playing sports, all those things, they're not really positioned to have conversation between each other, right? It's about something that you're all focused on. Even at the bar, I would imagine, there's a lot of activity. It's not a great place to have a heart to heart, right? So
Exactly.
super, super cool. And your keynotes. So what happened first? Reality TV and then this keynote kind of part of your business? Did that come after the reality TV?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, like I always would speak and present, but it was never like about my story as much until after reality TV. Like after reality TV, it's like I really stepped into this like space of discomfort. So the keynote started happening because I was speaking about things on social media that people wanted to hear me speak about in more detail. So
Well,
I
so
go
how do
ahead.
you think your life changed from before the reality TV to after? Like what could you ever imagine your life before what it would have been like?
Yes, I think my life before was very, I want to say like linear in the sense where I was just like, I have this job, I'm gonna move up this corporate ladder, and then I'm gonna like it didn't have this level of like anything is possible. Like it felt, it's weird because like I knew I didn't fit in that space, but I also didn't know how to get out of the space. Like I'm like, what? Like when my everyone's like, you need to be an entrepreneur. Like we could tell you're not, but I'm like, but in what though? So like my life before was very much like it was. I felt confused. Like I'm doing this corporate job. I hate it. I like like I was an urban planner, so I love the concept of like building environments for people in which they could thrive. Like
Mm.
that was why I became an urban planner. But I realized like the job is not even that. So like I don't even get to do this. The job is like I'm just pushing papers. Like I'm not.
Not that sexy.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I feel like I was sold a dream. So I was like, oh, I've been sold a dream, but how am I gonna get out of this dream? Like what? And then
Mm,
it's like it, and I think that's what happens. Like in life, like sometimes you be stuck on your path, and you be like, I'm stuck here, and you kind of have to look and be like, instead of looking so tunnel vision and straight, you kind of have to open your sight lines. And I think like reality TV, I didn't ever imagine that being the thing. But once that became the thing, I think the biggest thing I took away from the whole experience was like, oh, there's a whole world out here. Like I could do
mm,
anything. Whereas before I was like, I did my schooling this. I got a bachelor, I got a master's. Like I spent so much energy on this. I got to do this. But now I'm just like, well, if I don't, I'm gonna try something and it doesn't work. I'm gonna do it anymore. I can just apply for a PhD. If I don't get in, we'll do something else. Or if I get in, maybe we'll do it. Like it's like life has this there's this energy in my life like anything's possible. Let's try things. And let's try them. And like now it's more like let's try them and let's fail at them faster if we're gonna fail. So we can learn like the next thing. But it's a completely different mentality, I would say.
mm. Well, I mean, you were kind of plucked out of nowhere, it sounds like. It didn't sound like you were looking to be in show business or looking to be on TV. What was it about you that you think they noticed, the producers noticed?
What's funny is I didn't give you the full backstory. So
Okay.
if we rewind to that, it was actually my dad. So my dad is a stand-up comedian.
Oh, okay.
And what happens was like he was always like in our family, like he's the one, the loud one, the like the center of attention. Like that's him. Like he's the villain, the hero, like he's everything.
Hmm.
So he approached me and he was like, "Hey, do you want to go on the Amazing Race Canada?
Oh,
Because that would be so much fun for us." And it's so because when I was younger, sorry, we're both younger actually. He used to do courier around Montreal because our
okay.
family's from Montreal. So he do
Oh, okay.
courier, and I was like 3, 4 years old, like directing him on the map. So he's like, "How cool would this be like for us to be like racing across the country, like me driving and you directing me? Like this could be cool and it's good exposure for my comedy career." So I was like, "Yeah, like sign me up. Like I don't care to be on TV, but if you want, I'll do it with you." And what ends up happening is we go through this audition process for a couple years. Like we don't get on the first year, we don't get on the second year, we get on the third year, a bunch of stuff happens. And then the fourth year, we get on again, and we're 2 weeks away from leaving. And they're like, well, there's no flights because it's COVID. So we're like, oh, like finally we're actually on the show. And now we can't, now we got to postpone the season. So the season got postponed. Then later on that year, a producer from the same production team called me and she was like, I really liked you during the Amazing Race audition. I think you'd actually be good for this show. And
Oh,
that's how it happened.
okay, got you. Oh, okay, that makes
Yeah. So it wasn't completely out of the blue. It's like she had some exposure to me. She's like, oh, you'd actually be good for this. And then I was like, I don't watch it, but like, why not? And then I go on and win it. Like that's what was so funny about it. A lot of people who go on this show are huge fans of the show. With me, I was just like, yeah, whatever. Like, I guess we'll do it. And then it really exceeded my expectation. I didn't really see that coming.
Hmm. And so now, what's your vision for? Well, how does coaching tie into all this? So you finish, you get your keynote speaking, you've got all this behind you, and you come to be certified as a coach.
I think for me, like coaching was two things for me. I think it wasn't necessarily just two things. I think it was mainly one thing for me. It was like I want to see this through and learn about it because I have a coach actually we know really, really well, Lawrence Anthony. He's
I
my
do know
coach.
Lawrence, yes.
Yeah. So Lawrence actually recommended the program because I started with Lawrence probably around just under a year ago.
Oh, okay.
And I really saw the impact that it was having in my life. And I was like, oh, he's really good at this. And like, I see a lot of the same qualities in him and myself. I think that was even one of the first questions in our coaching program. What kind of coach would you want to be? And it was like, kind of like him, actually. So in that, I was like, you know what? I want to learn about this. I don't have any expectation to necessarily be a coach after, but I want to just learn about how the practice works, the principles of it, and like it was just literally just a learning experience to learn more about myself and the practice. Now that I've gone through it, I'm I'm actually not clear on how I will implement coaching in my life because there's a few things that I'm still figuring out in terms of how much time do I want, like how much it's really about how do I want to spend my time. And I think like all the things that I'm trying to build right now, I'm just curious about, and I'm still working through this. Is really about how do I want to spend my time. So I'm in the process of building that. But how I see coaching being involved is that I coach few people,
Mm-hmm.
but I coach people who have, how do I say it? Like either I really want to coach them for whatever the reason might be, and then secondly, like they've done some pre work prior to me coaching them. So it's not like, hey, like you seem cool, I'm gonna coach you. It's kind of like there's some kind of rationale or reason in which I would really want to coach that person, but I know how I am with my energy. I don't know if I could, I don't know if it would be, I don't know if I have the style or personality style to coach like a lot of people all at once as individual clients. I think that's something that I've identified early. Like if I had individual clients, there'd probably be a handful of them, if even that. But I like the idea of using these coaching principles to build something that has a greater impact beyond just one-on-one sessions. So if I was going to say what I would take from the coaching course is like taking what we're able to achieve in one-on-one and multiplying that impact. I was actually quite inspired that when you came on and did one of our sessions, it was very inspiring because it was like that's why I was asking so much about how you built this academy, because I was interested in like how can I learn from what you've done and like apply it to some of like the work I'm doing with men. Like what are some things that how do we like how did you start? Where did it like what were the steps? And you kind of explained them and I'm like, okay, so it started off with one thing and then it like multiplied into another thing and then another thing and then
Like it sounds like you have two workshops under your belt, right? That you've done, that you've put on these experiences for people. I think for me, it was the same. It was like started with a program and then experimented with that and piloted a lot and, and ran these sort of uh, experiences like what you're doing. And then you figure out what's working, what's not working. You keep improving it, you keep adding, and you start to advertise and you start to bring more people in. And next thing you know, you're running, every couple of months or every month. Like it starts to add, it starts to build momentum on its own because people talk to each other. The referrals are a big part of it. But yeah, it's so interesting to hear your sort of the timeline of events in your life. And so now what's the ideal vision for you? What's the North Star?
Um, I think I think I'm still working through that. It's so funny. I'm actually doing like this whole leadership 360 thing with all like my colleagues and close friends to really get a sense of like my strengths
Oh,
and
nice.
some of my blind spots from their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's next for me is very interesting. Like I think I see two things happening almost simultaneously. There's like the growth of my personal brand, and there's the growth of the men's wellness, like my men's wellness brand.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of what's next, it's really like building that out into a business. I feel like right now, as it stood, it was very much a movement more than a business, right? And the way I was framing it, because I had a big reframe on this, it was like, oh, like if we break even or lose money, it's okay because we're helping. And like in different conversations I've had lately, even in church, we talked about money the other day. It was like, oh, like no, like money is actually very important to multiply impact of this movement. And I actually look at it not as a movement, but as a business. Fundamentally, you're offering a service that is helping people. It is a business. And think of it that way. So I think for me, like the North Star is growing impact, but also like learning how to build a business. Because like even like the business I have with my personal brand, it's still a business, but I don't think also I've been treating it as a business in the way in which I want to, as I see things now. Like before, it was just like, yeah, I'm doing these brand deals, I'm doing these keynote speaking, I'm getting paid. Like I'm doing all these things and getting paid, but I don't know if I'm treating it and structuring it like it's incorporated, but I don't think I'm treating it like a business. So like for me, it's growing that impact on helping men become better men. It's also like solidifying my key messaging. Like I went on Chat GPT at the start of the year. I'm like, what do I really need to what knowing everything you know about me from all these conversations that we've had, what is the most important? What are the most important things for me to do this year? And the number one was craft your signature message.
Oh, interesting.
And whether it's helping men or not, because to be honest with you, like I feel like I see my personal brand as speaking to actually more women. I feel like women are more engaged on my personal side and men are more engaged on my wellness brand. And that's like a download I just had today. So I'm like, maybe I can speak to them in both different ways, but the message is still the same. And like my key messaging I've been working with is start with you. My brand is called Mind State You. Becoming unstoppable starts with you. Getting unstuck starts with you. So I'm like, I've been toying around with this idea of like that being my signature message, but like really trying to implement it and have everything come together as one. So it's like growing impact, growing business, and bringing everything together. I would say is like that's my North Star.
Hmm. And so what has been the hardest part for you to overcome, like in yourself in all this journey?
Two things which people have identified today actually with this one 360 report I've been doing: self-doubt and knowing when to end relationships.
Mm.
So self-doubt firstly is like I have every time I do something like should I, can I don't know, I hope if we break even. Like the mentality is very much like it's I do this thing where I play small a lot,
Mm.
right? Like I play to this I hope and maybe I don't know when I really know, but it's like I have this it's like this fear of like failing or fear of things not working out or fear of people judging me. Like there's like a lot of like fear around these things, which I don't always let overcome me. Like eventually I get to where I need to get, but it takes so much heavy lifting sometimes to like get all these monkeys off my back. And it's like I need to not even really wrestle with them for long as much as I am. So I think it's like really like for me it's overcoming this self-doubt. And I heard this quote recently, like courage is not the absence of fear, it's feeling the fear and doing it anyways. So it's like it's acknowledging, okay, yeah, this is scary, but it is what it is. That's the journey. And just like pushing through that. You know, and so that's the first one. And then the second one is relationships. Like I think in order to go where we want to go in our lives, we can't always bring everybody.
Hmm.
And I have this thing where it's like I want to bring everybody, I want to help everybody. I have people in my life who might not be in like they might not have my best interest at heart, but I still try to understand why that might be and make excuses and keep them in my life. And I just have to be like, no, this isn't working for me. Move on. Like being easily able to fire people from my life and fire people as friends. And apparently it's important for employees and staff, but it's also important for like people in your life.
Yeah, there's a great exercise. Think like a CEO about your life and your own, like what you have agency over. So the question is, if I had, if who owns your shares in your company, which is you,
Yeah.
so who owns those shares, and which ones would you buy back
Mhm.
if you could? And it's a great exercise that Lawrence can take you through. But that's well, thanks for sharing that. That's really it's commendable, like all the work that you want to do and the, where your heart is and where, where I see all of your energy is. I'm curious also about like what would you say is the one way to work through some of that self-doubt or some of those things that you need to overcome?
I would say it's telling yourself the truth, to be honest with you. Um, Lawrence says this quite a lot. When we talk about fear, he'll say, false evidence appearing real.
Yes, I've heard him say that.
In that voice, false evidence appearing
You do
real.
it well.
Those things aren't the truth, right? And my therapist will say something like, even when you have one of those truths and you think they're a truth, come up with a couple alternate ones. Or even in coaching would say, what else could be true? I think it's really leaning into those things. It's really telling yourself the truth. And when I think to myself, I can't do this, that I can't do this because like people are gonna think I'm stupid, people are gonna think I'm a failure. Or people will think you've tried something and you were brave and courageous to try, that you're willing to learn, that's the entrepreneurial. There's other truths than like people are gonna judge you and hate you or criticize you because honestly, the people who are even doing that are not doing anything anyway, so they don't even really matter. So it's like these are the truths that you start having to uncover, or even the truth of I've done hard things before. I've gotten through things that I didn't think I could get through before. That's another truth. So I think it's really like looking yourself in the mirror, actually really looking yourself in the mirror and telling the truth. Like, is this true? What else could be
Mm.
true?
Well, some of the questions I love on that kind of same line of thinking is the what's at risk if I do it, what's at risk if I don't, right?
Love that one.
Or the regret question, what will I regret looking back on my life? I think that one also is a big one to step into. Life's not a dress rehearsal. You get one chance, right? To try and do and try and fail. But I do love Lawrence's whole theme on fear. And I absolutely believe that, I want to have as many experiences where I can fail so that I can accelerate my learning curve. Because I believe failure is an avenue or a pathway to learning, right? So when you reframe failure for yourself, it has powerful impact on what you will or won't do, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, so like to your point, like that has been like really helpful for me. And another thing I find is really like riding the flow of things, because like I feel like in the Bible they talk about like this too shall pass. So like good
Mm,
moments will pass, and like bad moments will pass too. But when we're in the good, like when we're in that flow, really riding it out. Like if I'm in a flow of creativity, create as much as I can. Don't stop because
mhm,
that's enough for today. It's like no, just really ride that flow. And like I was in that yesterday. Like I created so much content because there's days where it's like I really don't feel like doing it, and I won't be in that creative state. And then I'm forcing it when it's like it's hard to force creativity. So like that's another thing that I've learned is like really just like riding the flow of greatness,
mhm,
because it creates more momentum.
mhm. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate all of your, the shares and all of your perspectives on this. What would be one thing that you would share about um, coaching? Like, what do you see as the opportunity for coaching?
What do I see as the opportunity? There's a lot of things. I'm trying to summarize it in my mind. The opportunity for coaching to me is really, to me, it's like a self reflection exercise that impacts everyone around you.
Mm,
And to me, it's like the opportunity from it is not just, I think a lot of people are like, I want to change my life and just, I want to have a business, I want a career change. But I think it's so much more than that. And for a second, like I'll compare it to like, I go to Toastmasters very often, and that's this public speaking
oh, good.
program that I do.
Yeah.
I do it almost every week. And people think like I go there for the speaking. And I'm like, no, that's actually just a bonus. What I actually go there for is facing that feeling of being scared to get up and speak. It's like normalizing that feeling of being courageous. That's what I get out of it. The network and the community by doing it together.
Mm,
So when we bring it back to coaching, I
mhm,
think for me it's like it's that reflective practice of having to look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself the truth and identify areas in which you are strong, areas in which you could improve, and areas in which, if anything were possible, what would you do? You get to do all of that. And all of that has impacts not just on yourself, but on everybody around you. Building a business and doing it as a career is a bonus. The other things are like, and the community that you get from it.
mhm,
The career in it would just be a bonus at this point because what it's done for me, it's brought me from one stage in my life to another one. And I may not even practice coaching. Who knows? But I implement it in so many areas of my life because it's like whether we want to see it or not, like it's about relationships. It's about psychology. Like and life is about relationships. To be honest with you, relationship with yourself, relationship with it, whatever others, like that is what
mhm.
life is about. And I think coaching really unlocks that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we say the first life to change is yours, because that's what happens when you learn the skills of coaching. You really learn to, like you said, improve the relationship with yourself. And I also believe strongly that when you grow, others grow around you. So I think that's a big part of it too. So where can people reach you if they want to? I know your name is pretty easy to Google. But other than that, is there anything else?
Um, no, like there's Tychon X Carter on Instagram. There's TychonCarter.com. That's my website, and then all my socials are connected to my Instagram. So if people are
Okay.
looking for me, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I want to become like I want to do more on LinkedIn because
Yeah.
LinkedIn is where I always say that's where the money is. So I want to do
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
want to do more on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's a great platform. So yeah, you can find me definitely. My name is just super unique. So if you type in my name, you'll find me
I
really
know.
good.
I know. I know. I remember when I went into your class, I had trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Tychon is like struggle is a struggle for a lot of people. But yeah, it's good because now if people are looking for Tychon,
Absolutely.
it's not hard to find.
Yeah. Yeah. I named my daughter Devon with an A because I wanted her to have an equal opportunity in life and also to, stand out a little with a name like that. But yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate this. This is it. So, I hope that I wish you tremendous success in your endeavors. I hope that it all goes well for you. And yeah, and I really hear that you're doing a lot of good work. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope we stay connected. Like, I love all that you're doing and what you have built here. And it's not just like about the education. There is a strong community aspect,
Hmm.
which I truly can appreciate and I'm part of. So it's like I'd love to always stay connected. So thank you for this
Yeah.
opportunity. This was great.
Thanks a lot, Tishon.